Welcome to today's Focus On episode, highlighting the annual Black Management Forum Policy Conference and Achievement Awards. The BMF began in 1976 when a Black support group formed to address the challenges of corporate structures in South Africa. Today, it focuses on socio-economic transformation through the empowerment of previously disadvantaged demographic groups. The BMF is dedicated to developing its members' managerial and leadership skills through workshops, conferences, and programs. In this episode, we will be speaking to Ms. Asetu Mangotwa, acting president of the BMF. Ms. Asetu, welcome to the show. What is the main idea behind the awards?
So it's a policy conference with an aspect of the awards. I think it's more focused on the policy conference, which we hold annually. As an advocacy and lobby group that has been advocating for socio-economic transformation in this country since 1974, we come together each year to talk about how far we think we've come, to talk about whether policies are working, whether policies are not working. For example, we call ourselves the midwives of the Employment Equity Act, which gave rise to the BEE Commission, which was chaired by our president, Cyril Ramaphosa. But when we look at BEE, however many years on, we start to want to ask each other questions about how best do we strengthen this legislation. To some people would say, why don't you just do away with it? Actually, the focus should be on strengthening it, on broadening it, and on making it a lot more effective. So that's the policy conference part of it. And then the Achievement Awards is really to honor and to recognize companies who have made serious strides. There's companies who have been so deliberate, and they show everybody else that you can actually do it if you are intentional about it, and if you understand the socio-economic merits of it, and if you understand the demographics of the country. We've seen companies with excos that have transformed from all white male, for example, to now 50, 60, 70% black female. We've seen boards transform. We've seen transformation really become part of the ethos of some of these organizations. They're not just doing it for their BEE scorecard. And so those are the kind of companies that we want to award, as well as certain managers that we also want to, who have done brilliantly well for themselves.
Talk us through this year's theme, Pathways to an Inclusive Economy for Socio-Economic Minority.
So the theme came about by having a reflection to say, whilst we are the majority in terms of demographics and numbers, we're actually the economic minority still, all of these years down the line. And as I mentioned, we still want to use BEE and the codes and the priority sectors to actually achieve this shift from being a let's say a political or even a racial majority, but then finding yourself as an economic minority. And so some of the sub-themes will be looking at exactly that. We'll be looking at some of the priority areas like management control. We'll be looking at how to effectively use supplier and enterprise development. We'll be looking at ownership. We'll be looking at skills development, because interestingly, a lot of companies get BEE points on skills development. But then you ask yourself, these skills, why are they not moving up the ladder in your corporate? So if you had to say, I trained somebody or I took them on a course 5 years ago, where's that person now? Why are they still stuck either at a middle or lower management level? So those are kind of the things that we want to go deeper into and to understand and to make the changes that will make those priority areas become effective.
This topic is not foreign to the BMF. It's been around for a while now, and some would argue that Triple BE has failed to achieve its purpose. What would you say to this?
I wouldn't say it's failed to achieve its purpose. I would rather say that, like any policy, even if you have a corporate plan or a strategy in a company, I think where we have possibly failed or been weak is in constantly reviewing and reviving and ensuring that as the country moves and takes different shapes. You know, we're not the same country as we were in 1994. We don't have the same social fabric as we had we've got serious problems now. We've had COVID, we've got riots, our economy is struggling to grow. And if this policy was conceived at the height of economic growth, you would find that you wouldn't need to have these checks and balances and these revisions and always looking for loopholes. And I think perhaps that's where we as the BMF have seen that perhaps the policies were not airtight, but that we don't blame. That we are forever grateful to the people who came up with the policy, but we're saying it's our turn now. The baton has been handed over to us. We need to make sure that these policies are effective for the time that we're in, and also check for the loopholes, because you start finding certain organizations, which I won't name, you know, take this certain aspect to court and win, and take that certain aspect to court and win, take this minister to court and win. And if you look at that in totality, when you add all of that up, you actually get to realize that the policy is being eroded at slowly but surely. So that's why we still think it's very relevant, and we're not going to shift our focus from the policy.
The BMF has been in existence for 46 years now. Would you say there's any measurable progress in your voices to be heard at this present moment? Or is the BMF still fighting to have their voice heard?
So I think as a lobbying and advocacy group, the one thing that I often say to people who say, all you do is talk, all you do is go on TV, shout and scream. Yes, we will do that because it's part of our mandate, but actually we have got very phenomenal programs that we run as the BMF. We've got a young professionals development program, we've got a middle management development program, we've got a program that we have together with Duke, which is called Women in Power, which I absolutely love. And then we've partnered with Wits and Gibbs to give us each 5 MBA bursaries. And so for us, you know, our tagline is developing managerial leadership, and then people would be like, how are you developing managerial leadership if you're just shouting about this or that CEO? But we actually have the most phenomenal programs, and you could almost say it takes a young professional right from the student chapter up to the C-suite. And so those are the things we're proud about. We're also proud that there was actually a time where BEE was not a JSE listing requirement. And the BMF was instrumental in making sure that BEE is part of the listing requirements. There's quite a lot of things where when we engage, we get corporates to see things in a different way. Sometimes people are not being malicious, but they just need you to explain and to just take them back to the imperatives of why this country has to transform. You know, someone said, and I won't quote them, but I won't own the quote, there can never be a sustainable economic or political stability in this country if the majority people of the country don't have a stake in their own economy. So if they don't have a stake in the economy, we're still going to see more riots because, well, it's not their shops, it's not their banks, it's not their insurance companies. All they see is that they're being marginalized and continue to be marginalized in their own country. And what's even worse is after COVID and in this slow growth era, which is one of the biggest bugbears that should obsess us all and keep us awake at night, is the fact that this economy is not growing. And if this economy is not growing, it means our social problems and our socio-economic problems start to really grow. You know, you've got things like gender-based violence, you've got these riots, you've got pockets of upheaval. And part of that is simply because people don't have that sense of dignity to wake up and go and make something of their lives, because there's simply no growth, and that means that there's no jobs.
So what are the BMF's achievements in championing transformation?
So first of all, the BMF, as I say, is the I like using the word midwife. So it was at a BMF conference where the employment equity law was sort of conceived of, which then they formed the BEE Commission and had to go through NEDLAC and all of the procedures to actually get a policy into law. The other things that we've done is to lobby very hard for women. So we've got a focus this year. I chair the Women's Empowerment Desk myself. We've got a focus this year on women empowerment, and whilst we're checking about transformation in excos and boards, we're also focusing on the gender issue. I'll give you an example. For us as the BMF to lead by example, you can't have two leaders in any structure, one being both males. So one has to be a female. If the president is a female, the deputy has to be a male, and vice versa. So you'll never find two men leading a structure in the BMF, and that's something that we are trying to also inculcate as we engage with certain corporates, and those really are our focus areas. It's transformation, it's skills development, as you can see through our programs, and we have a huge focus on gender this year. And just maybe also to mention, I think the BMF stands for ethical leadership. And I think that's a huge issue in this country right now. And out of the Zondo Commission, the BMF has realized that the people who normally are whistleblowers tend to be managers, middle management, who are not unionized. And we're saying as the BMF, we want to be that place that those people can go to, because we've heard the painful, painful stories of whistleblowers who won't get hired anywhere, who nobody wants to, they suddenly get ostracized by society, which doesn't really make sense. And we are really wanting to be that place for managers who've taken a risk to save the country. They've almost, they've done country duty, and they have nowhere to turn. And as the BMF, we want to be that place for those people.
In order for people to participate in this, how would you say people who are willing to learn about BBBE and to improve on the ethics within the company, how do they participate in these awards, in this conference?
So the conference is, on the website, you can register for the conference, and for BMF members, it's free in the conference. So we try to make the conference highly, highly, highly accessible, so it's not at a high cost. So if you go to bmfonline.co.za, you will find the link to register for the conference. We'll be at Gallagher on the 3rd and the 4th of November, and it's usually a very packed affair. It really is. I mean, we've got so many business leaders. We're actually so humbled. We've got politicians, we've got business leaders. We've even got a panel speaking about the just transition. And how do black people take part in this just transition? Let's not only talk about moving away from coal energy into renewables, but how do we ensure that we don't leave the sector of the economy behind while we do that? So those are some of the exciting topics that we'll be discussing at conference, and we really encourage people to register and to come through to conference and take part.
That was Ms. Esetu Mankoatwa, Acting President of the BMF. She spoke to us about the annual Black Management Forum Policy and Conference and Achievement Awards. That wraps up today's Focus On episode. Until next time, it's goodbye for now.